So, like I said, my name is Abby Harris. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for over 2 decades. And for most of my career, I've been representing highly regulated entities and industries in different capacities. I started my career as a law clerk to the Supreme Court of New Jersey. And then I was at a very large firm where we represented all sorts of entities from healthcare to construction to environmental companies. And always, especially with my Supreme Court background, so much of agency actions go to appellate courts. I always really enjoyed dealing with regulated entities and their interactions with the regulatory system and agencies. I also have served as chief legal officer to different insurance carriers, again, on the executive level, dealing with regulated entity issues, and most recently had the incredible honor and privilege to be the chief counsel of the New Jersey Senate Majority Office in Trenton, dealing directly with the Senate President, Senate leadership, as well as leadership in the governor's office and the Assembly on a whole host of policy issues. I'm now at Connell Foley, where I get to work with amazing attorneys like Alnardo who deal with folks in your industry every day with real life. So blending sort of the policy background with the application to your industry is what we hope to do today. So I'll let Alnardo share a little bit about his work and his background.
Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Abby. When you listen to Abby's bio, every time she says it, I'm more impressed. I guess I get a little bit more sticks. But Abby is a amazing partner, and her ability to understand the regulatory environment in Trenton is amazing. And every time I talk to her about a regulatory issue that we might have, uh, I learned something. So I'm excited to be able to talk to her and have her as my partner. She understands, I think, both the inside game and the outside game, which is, I think, the key to being an effective advocate in a regulatory environment. I've been practicing law for 30 years. I do real estate, land use, redevelopment. I've been doing that for 30 years. We represent the largest developers in the state. And we help them with everything from environmental to entitlements to buy, sell, financing, the whole real estate spectrum, the whole gamut. We also represent a number of public utilities, so gas, I'm sorry, sewer and water utilities. I've been the general counsel for the Union and Essex County Joint Meeting for probably 20 years at this point. So I've had a lot of experience in utilities, representing Jersey Municipal Utility Authority. I was general counsel there for about 10 years. Done a lot of work with Trenton Water Authority. I've also represented United Water, now Veola. Have represented a number of public electric utilities, PSE&G, JCP&L. So I've been in the space, in real estate and utility space, for the better part of 30 years. And just excited to talk about this. There's a lot going on. And I think Abby's going to tell you that the governor actually talked about something today. So we'll try to get an update maybe as the seminar goes along. But today we're going to talk basically about the three executive orders, and the plan is for Abby to kind of walk you through what they say and how they say it, and then I'm going to try to give you some real world examples. And hopefully that takes about a half an hour, 40 minutes, and then we'll answer questions for 20 minutes or so, and that'll be our hour. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Abby and let her rock and roll on executive order number one.
Great. Thank you. And yes, just, as we were logging on today, the governor is actually giving a press conference as we speak. I'm trying to get some live, text updates so I can hopefully toward the end of the Zoom here talk a little bit more about it. Fortunately, she's talking, I think, a little bit more about Executive Order number 5, which is at the end of our presentation. So maybe we'll be able to share some of, real-time info. So I'm going to talk about Executive Orders 1 and 2, the nitty-gritty. These are long executive orders. I have a lot of notes. I have my water ready. So just bear with me as we talk, a little bit about the policy behind them and what these orders actually do. And as you heard, Elnardo is the expert in how this applies to real life. So he knows a lot more about gigawatts and power grids and all that than I do, but I'm going to do my best to outline what the administration's intent is in these orders. And so we're going to start with Executive Order number 1. And this is what's sort of referred to as the affordability order, or as the folks that I spoke with in the governor's office, they stop the bleeding order, right? Before I talk about the exact details, I want to just frame in general how the administration has explained that it's thinking about these set of orders collectively. So, in preparation for this presentation, I spoke to some folks in the governor's office and the folks who are going to be in the newly formed permitting office who were involved in the issuance and, really the thought process of these executive orders. The governor issued these executive orders on the first day of her administration, and taken together, they're really designed to address three interconnected challenges: immediate electricity affordability issues, long-term energy supply and reliability issues, and the efficiency and transparency of the state's permitting system. And the consistent message from the front office, I'm not sure why we call the governor's office the front office, but that when I say front office, that's what we sort of colloquially refer to the governor's office, um, is the unpredictable energy costs and the unpredictable permitting timelines can make it harder for residents, businesses, developers just to plan, right? And so the goal with all these orders is to make, quote, the rules of the game more clear. So more transparency on pricing, more predictability in permitting, and just better affordability overall. So we're going to go to the details of Executive Order number 1. The message behind it is very direct. New Jersey has an electricity affordability emergency, and the state is trying to stop the bleeding, stop the pain while it works on longer term fixes. So the order starts with a pretty stark, but straightforward premise. Electricity is not optional. It's fundamental to the health, safety, economic stability, business operations, housing costs, daily life of New Jersey residents. And the administration has concluded that electricity costs have reached a crisis point for so many residents, families, businesses. So the order formally declares a statewide electricity affordability emergency, and it directs the Board of Public Utilities, in coordination with other agencies, to take immediate and long-term action. The order notes that between June of 2023 and June of 2025, the average residential electricity prices in New Jersey rose by more than 33%. And then when you add in commercial customers, the average prices are about 30% higher during that time. The order also points to the regional power market as a major driver of price pressure and these issues. So, just to be clear, we're not talking about like a modest increase in bills that, no one really notices. This is a sharp increase in basic household and basic business costs at a time when families and businesses are, dealing with higher costs overall, food costs, general cost of living. The order specifically notes that New Jersey homeowners rank fifth highest in the nation for the homeowner cost burden, and that nearly 1/3 of New Jersey homeowners with a mortgage are considered to be cost burdened, which means that they spend at least 30% of their income on housing costs. And also more than half of renters in New Jersey are also cost burdened. So the policy point that the administration is looking at is this. Rising electricity costs are not happening in isolation. They're landing on top of already expensive living in an already expensive state. The order also gets into a few of the reasons why electricity prices are rising. And one major reason is that pointed to by the order is the PJM capacity market. PJM is the regional grid operator for New Jersey as well as for a number of other states. And in simple terms, the capacity market is the market that pays generators to be available in the future so there's enough power when the system needs it. That market's become expensive. The order states that PJM capacity prices increased by more than 800% in 2024, and that the region has seen record-setting capacity prices at recent auctions. The executive order also identifies several reasons for that spike. Peak electricity demand is outpacing supply. Data centers and other large users are increasing demand. Older coal-fired generation is retiring. PJM has been a bit slow in interconnecting new clean generation, and the market design has not produced enough new generation to meet this growing demand. So while the order is designed to impact affordability, it also recognizes that the underlying cause is supply capacity and market design. So those are all the problems and the policy issues identified by the executive order. So now what does this executive order actually do? It directs the Board of Public Utilities to provide residential universal bill credits, RUBCs, to offset increases in electricity supply costs that are scheduled to take effect in 2026. The credits, or at least some of the initial credits, must be issued no later than July 1. That's sort of the most immediate relief mechanism in that order. The order also directs a number of state agencies and authorities, BPU, DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, and EDA, the Economic Development Authority, to look at the use of Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiatives proceeds, RGGI proceeds, for ratepayer relief, and to publicly explain how those funds can be used in the 2026 through the 2028 planning period. The order also requires BPU to review societal benefit charge, which appears on electric bills, and to review the Clean Energy Program budget. And the order says by May 1st, BPU must issue a true-up budget that prioritizes direct ratepayer relief and identifies opportunities to support energy efficiency programs for income qualifying ratepayers. Number 4, BPU is directed by this executive order to consider whether it can reduce that societal benefits charge that I just mentioned without compromising direct energy assistance programs or support for income qualifying customers. 5th, and perhaps importantly for some folks on this meeting, BPU is directed to consider whether pending utility rate increase or cost recovery proceedings should be paused, modified, or held in abeyance to the extent permitted by law. So that's sort of some of the oversight mechanisms in this executive order. The order also directs BPU to study the traditional electric utility business model. Within 180 days of the order's issuance, BPU must issue a study looking at how the traditional model affects affordability and what policy changes might stabilize or reduce electric bills in the long term. The order specifically identifies performance-based rate making, multi-year rate plans, reduced reliance on capital spending, possible reductions in return on equity, enhanced review of transmission projects, securitization, and changes to infrastructure investment programs. So with this order, the administration is not just saying we need bill credits. It's also saying we need to examine whether the way utilities earn money is aligned with affordability. The order also requires public stakeholder process as part of the review. The administration wants input from utilities, customers, business, development, community. And just as an aside, this is a consistent message from this administration. They really want to hear from folks that are impacted by this. They want ideas, they want dialogue from businesses, from people, from families, from trade groups. So the overall takeaway from this first executive order is that it's designed to provide immediate customer relief and also begin a longer term conversation about what needs to be modernized and changed. But this is why we're also going to talk about executive order number 2, because while executive order number 1 is trying to manage sort of and halt the pain or the bleeding, as I keep saying, it doesn't create a new electricity supply, which is really a huge driver of the problems that the EO is attempting to address. So that's why I'm also going to talk about executive order number 2. Because while New Jersey is trying to sort of soften the blow to customers right now, the deeper policy challenge is making sure that the state has enough affordable and reliable electricity to support all of the needs of household, businesses, redevelopment, and future growth. So we can go to the slide number 2 that is up right now about the second executive order. So executive order number 2, similar to executive order number 1, also declares a formal statewide energy emergency, but it has a different focus. This focus is supply reliability and long-term control. So, excuse me, I've been talking a lot. I need to have a little water. If executive order number 1 is stopping this pain, this bleeding from the electric bills, executive order number 2 is about addressing the underlying problem, which is namely New Jersey needs more reliable energy supply, needs it more quickly, and it needs tools to reduce peak demand. So the administration's view in this order is that affordability and all of these related issues cannot be solved just through bill credits or rate review or oversights. Those don't produce electricity, right? And the deeper problem is that this electricity demand is growing faster than the system can reliably serve it. PJM has predicted significant peak load growth by 2030, driven in part by data centers, electrification, and large new energy users. And obviously, when demand rises faster than available supply, the market responds with higher prices. So, recent PJM capacity auctions have added billions of dollars in new costs to ratepayers, including substantial costs allocated to New Jersey. Executive Order number 2 treats recent PJM auction outcomes as having added billions of dollars in costs while increasing reliability risks. So, this is important to recognize that this is addressed in the executive order because this executive order is not just an environmental or energy policy. It's an economic development issue. High and unpredictable energy costs make it harder for businesses to plan, harder for developers to underwrite projects, harder for the state to remain competitive. So the order reflects this broader concern that this energy cost and availability volatility is tied directly to economic competitiveness and New Jersey's ability to attract and retain investment. Um, the order also discusses the issue of reliability. As you can see on the slide, it talks about a 4.5 gigawatt supply shortfall. The point here is that the issue is not only price, it's whether the grid has enough capacity to meet future demand, especially during peak periods. So when the system does not have enough reserve capacity, that can cause real life problems. Load shedding, brownouts, blackouts, and all of that also results in serious constraints on economic growth. The order explicitly warns that without intervention, the risk of these conditions increases. So, what does the executive order do? Executive Order 2 pushes a solar and storage blitz. It's designed to accelerate new generation and storage resources, solar development, expanded solar capacity, acceleration of the Garden State Energy Storage Program. And the policy theory is that New Jersey is at a point now where it really can't wait for one large centralized power plant. It needs a faster mix of distributed resources, solar, storage, community solar, other tools that can be deployed closer to where the energy is being used. The executive order also calls for virtual power plants. A virtual power plant aggregates smaller energy resources, rooftop solar, batteries, electric vehicles, smart thermostats, other distributed assets, and coordinates them so they can reduce demand on the grid when the system is under stress. Sometimes these virtual power plant programs can reduce peak demand by up to 10 or 20%. And this matters because the most expensive electricity is often the electricity that's needed at peak demand. So if the state can reduce that peak demand, it can reduce pressure on some of those prices and improve reliability. The second executive order also focuses on streamlining. It directs state agencies to identify permitting rules that can be waived or streamlined under emergency authority. It pushes utilities to improve interconnection processes, improve hosting capacity transparency, and address these speculative ghost load requests that can sometimes distort energy demand forecasts. So what that means is that if large users reserve or request capacity that may never materialize, the system can overestimate future demand. It can distort planning, increase perceived scarcity, and that puts an upward pressure on costs. The executive order also addresses longer-term supply through existing generation and nuclear strategy. The EO2 supports modernization of natural gas generation. It also establishes a nuclear power task force to plan for advanced nuclear generation, financing, and federal engagement. And you'll see on the slide, like the nuclear energy and strategy is sort of on the bottom. That's not a today immediate fix issue. This is more a long-term supply and reliability strategy that the state wants to explore more. So the key point on this executive order is that it's forward-looking, right? The customers might not see an immediate relief from some of the strategies or relief provided by executive order number 2, but its purpose is to prevent the next wave of cost increases by increasing supply, reducing peak demand, improving interconnection, and lowering exposure to volatile prices. The takeaway, I think, overall, looking at these two orders together, is this. The first one manages the affordability crisis, stops the bleeding. And the second one, second executive order, works to solve the supply problem that's driving the crisis. So for folks here, this is sort of a warning and also an opportunity, right? The warning is that energy availability is just such a major business and development constraint. But the opportunity is that projects that can incorporate some of these ideas, solar, storage, demand management, other energy solutions, are going to be very well positioned, not just from an environmental standpoint, but also from cost, reliability, permitting, predictability, competitive standpoint. And we can talk more about this later, but as I mentioned before, the administration has made it clear it really does want feedback from the business and development community as well as from families. The governor's office wants to hear potential solutions. It wants to engage in real dialogue. So again, we can talk more about this. I'm going to turn it over to Elnardo now to talk about how all of this info that we just shared can actually be applied sort of to some real life examples.
Thank you, Abby. I think Abby did a great job of walking us through executive orders one and two. I want to take those policy points and translate them into what they mean on the ground for commercial real estate owners, developers, lenders, tenants, municipalities, and institutional users. The short version is this. Electricity is no longer just a utility expense. It is becoming a development constraint, an underwriting issue, a leasing issue, a financing issue, and in some cases, a project feasibility issue. For years, we have looked at a real estate project. The core questions were fairly familiar. Do we have zoning? Do we have site control? Can we get financing? Can we get permits? Can we lease or sell the project at the rents or sale price that we need? Those questions still matter, and they always will. But there is another question that has to move to the front of the due diligence checklist. Can the project get the power it needs when it needs it at a cost that still makes the project economically viable? That's a shift. Executive order number one focuses on affordability. It recognizes that New Jersey has an immediate electricity cost problem. The order states that the average residential electricity prices rose more than 33% between 23 and 25, and the average electricity prices for all customers, including commercial customers, rose by nearly 30%. Those are historic increases. This is not a normal fluctuation. This is a structural cost shock. Executive order number two then goes deeper, talks about supply and reliability. Abby explained that executive order number two is aimed at accelerating new generation, storage, virtual power plants, interconnection improvements, and long-term supply resources. It recognizes that demand is rising quickly, including from data centers, electrification, and large energy users. So, in my previous life, I was a football player. So I think about EO number one as a painkiller, and EO number two is the surgery. It's the fix. EO number one manages an immediate bill impact. EO number two tries to address the supply problem that is causing the pain in the first place. Let me give you a couple of examples. The first issue is net operating income. Everybody in the real estate business understands that's what drives the business. Every owner, developer, lender, investor understands the value is driven by NOI. If operating expenses go up and revenue does not increase by the same amount, NOI goes down. If NOI goes down, value goes down. I've got a couple of simple examples. Assume you own a 250,000 square foot office building or mixed use commercial project. Suppose the electricity and related costs are running at $3 per square foot annually. That's about $750,000 a year. Now assume energy cost prices rise 25%. That's an additional $187,000 per year. The owner cannot pass this increase through fully to tenants. That NOI, 187,500 comes straight out of your pocket. Now apply a 6.5% cap rate, and that $187,000 reduction on NOI adds up to approximately a $3 million loss in asset value. So it doesn't take a lot. $187,000 increase in electric bill can impact an asset by up to $3 million in that example. This is not an accounting issue. This is a valuation issue. And the larger the asset, the more dramatic the impact. Take a 1,000,000 square foot industrial facility. If energy cost is 50 cents per square foot, and that's $500,000 per year, a 6.5% cap rate again, that could imply roughly $7.5 million in value impact if the cost cannot be recovered. This is why electricity costs matter to real estate people. The second issue is lease structure. A triple net lease, the landlord may be able to pass energy costs through to the tenant, but even then, the issue does not disappear. If the tenant's occupancy cost rises too much, the tenant may resist renewal, demand concessions, reduce expansion plans, or just choose to move to another state where this issue is not present. In a gross lease or modified gross lease, the landlord may absorb the cost directly. That can compress margins very, very quickly. In multifamily, the question becomes even more complicated. Some buildings are master metered, especially the older buildings. Some costs are borne by tenants. Some costs affect common areas, elevators, HVAC, lighting, parking garages, amenity spaces, life safety systems. Even when tenants pay their own electric bills, high utility costs affect affordability. So rent tolerance and concessions and political pressure become an issue. The owner should not assume that this is a tenant's problem. It may start as a tenant's problem, but over time it becomes the owner's problem as well because it affects rent growth, retention, leasing velocity, and overall asset valuation. The third issue is development feasibility. For a new development, especially industrial, life science, medical, manufacturing, cold storage, data centers, cannabis, food production, EV infrastructure, and large mixed-use projects, the electricity is not just a monthly cost, it's a gating item. You can have a fully entitled project. You can have a redevelopment agreement. You can have a pilot. You can have financing. But if the site cannot get sufficient power on the required timeline, the deal can stall. And that's expensive. Assume a $100 million project, 8% cost of capital. If power availability or utility upgrades delay the project by 12 months, the carrying cost alone can be roughly $8 million. That does not include lost rent, lost tax benefits, construction escalation, tenant damages, or other lender issues. That's just the cost of carry. Even a 6-month delay can materially impact and change the project's economics. That's why utility capacity, interconnection, and timing must become part of the front end due diligence, not something addressed late in the process. The fourth issue is PJM capacity cost. Abby explained the PJM issue. Let me put it in real estate terms. PJM is a regional, grid provider. It runs a capacity market, which is supposed to ensure that enough power will be available. Sorry, excuse me. Just got a message clipping in. Sorry. The problem is the capacity prices have spiked. Executive Order number 1 states that PJM capacity prices increased more than 800% in 2024, and that the PJM region has experienced record-setting capacity price in recent auctions. The order identifies a core issue. Demand is outpacing supply. Data centers and other large users are increasing load. Older power plants are retiring. Big issue. PJM has delayed interconnection of new clean energy generation, and the market design has not produced enough new generation to meet demand. And PJM covers 13 states, so it's not just New Jersey. There's a whole region that's being impacted by it. This matters because capacity flows into supply rates. And even then, New Jersey's investor-owned utilities generally pass through electric supply costs without earning a profit on the supply itself. The customer still pays the bills. So when we say the utility is passing through the cost, that may be legally and financially accurate, but from the perspective of the building owner, the tenant, the hospital, the school, the warehouse, the manufacturer or developer, it still means higher cost of occupancy. The fifth issue is the rate smoothing of regulatory assets. This is where people often get confused. EO number 1 may help soften the immediate impact. The order directs BPU to provide residential universal bill credits by July 1st and to review sources of funding for ratepayer relief. It also directs BPU to review societal benefits charge and review the clean energy program budget issue true-up budget, prioritize direct ratepayer relief, and consider whether pending utility rate increases or cost recovery proceedings should be used, modified, or held in abeyance while legally permitted. This is meaningful, but the underlying costs don't vanish. The utility has already incurred a cost, and the state delays full recovery. That cost may be deferred and recovered later. In practical terms, the system can smooth the rate shock, but it cannot repeal the economics. For real estate, that means owners and developers should not underwrite as if a temporary pause or credit solves the issue permanently. The credit may reduce the pain now. A pause may delay the hit. A regulatory asset may spread the recovery over time, but the underlying cost pressure still remains in the system. So the question is not only what is my electrical bill today? The question is what costs are being deferred today that may come back into rates later. This is a very different underwriting question. It's important to understand that this cost doesn't disappear. It still remains in the system and has to be addressed. So it's essentially as if the utility company is borrowing money on a credit card with the bill to pay, with the guarantee to pay from the ratepayers in the future. EO number one is going to help by reducing immediate rate shock. For residential customers, bill credits can help stabilize household costs. For the broader economy, that matters because consumers' stress affects rent collections, retail spending, local politics, and affordability pressure. EO number one also may help by increasing scrutiny of utility costs. The order requires BPU to look at the components of societal benefit charge, clean energy program budget, and pending rate proceedings. That could create more transparency around what actually is driving electric bills. It's potentially important to the real estate industry because the traditional model can reward capital investment. In plain English, utilities often earn returns on approved infrastructure investment. That does not mean those investments are improper. Many are necessary. But the question EO1 raises is whether a model can be better aligned with affordability, interconnection speed, system efficiency, and customer outcomes. EO number two may help by increasing supply and reducing peak demand. It focuses on solutions like storage, virtual power plants, interconnection improvement, long-term generation. Abby noted in EO2 calls for expedited solar development, expansion in community solar, acceleration of the Garden State Energy Storage Program, and virtual power plant programs that can aggregate rooftop solar, batteries, and EV to reduce peak demand, hopefully by between 10 and 20%. This matters because peak demand drives the most expensive parts of the system. If New Jersey can reduce peak demand, accelerate new generation, improve interconnection, and bring storage online, it can reduce pressure on capacity prices over time. But owners and developers should not wait for the state to solve everything. There are practical steps the industry should be taking now. First, every acquisition should include energy due diligence memo. That memo should ask a number of questions. What's the current electric load? What's the historical usage? What is the projected future load? What is sufficient capacity for intended use? Will this project require a service upgrade? What is the utilities estimated timeline? Are there offsite upgrades? Who pays for those upgrades? Are the deposits, contributions, and aid of construction payments or interconnection cost? Are there pending rate cases that could materially affect operating expenses? Are there building systems that can be upgraded to reduce load? Is solar feasible? Is battery storage feasible? Is the roof structurally capable of supporting solar? Are the parking canopies, brownfields, or adjacent parcels that can support distributed generation? Can the project participate in demand response, community solar storage, or future virtual power plant programs? Every development pro forma should include an electricity sensitivity analysis. Do not use the utility cost number. Run your scenarios, base case, rent up, electricity up 10%, electricity up 20%, electricity up 30%. delayed power availability by 6 months, power availability by 12 months, required off-site upgrade, tenant reimbursement limited, common area costs not recoverable. Then show what happens to the NOI, the debt service coverage, return on cost, and value. Every lease negotiation, revisit energy pass-throughs. Owners need to know that whether electricity increases can be passed through. Tenants need to know whether they are taking unlimited exposure. Sophisticated parties should begin negotiating energy caps, audit rights, sub-metering obligations, efficiency responsibilities, solar rights, storage rights, and the cost of sharing for upgrades. These things are now necessary to be included in your lease. Public-private partnerships, public-private projects need to evaluate power earlier. For redevelopment projects, pilot projects, school projects, medical campuses, industrial projects, the mixed-use districts, the question of power should be part of the redevelopment plan, part of the financial agreement, site plan review, and infrastructure strategy. Municipalities also need to understand that power availability can affect whether a redevelopment actually happens, whether your COA obligation is actually satisfied. Let me give you an example. A warehouse conversion. A developer buys an older industrial building and plans to convert it for high-tech logistics, cold storage, or advanced manufacturing. The zoning works, the building works, the location works, but the tenant's power demand is much higher than the prior use. If the required electrical upgrade takes 18 months, the landlord may lose the tenant or carry the building vacant. This can wipe out a projected return. Example two, a hospital or medical office campus. Healthcare facilities have high reliability needs. They can not simply absorb power interruptions. For them, electricity cost matters, but reliability matters even more. Backup power, redundancy, storage, interconnection timelines become central to the project budget. A data center or large load user, example three, a data center, power is the project. The building is almost secondary. If power is unavailable, delayed, or politically controversial, the development risks changes completely. The users may need to think about behind the meter generation, storage, direct utility coordination, a state level engagement much earlier than a traditional real estate project would typically require. So where does that leave us? Abby's summaries of EO number 1 and EO number 2 show that the administration understands two things at once. First, New Jersey needs immediate affordability relief. Second, affordability cannot be solved without more supply, better interconnection, more storage, and better demand management. For commercial real estate, this creates both risk and opportunity. The risk is that electricity costs and power availability can undermine NOI, valuations, tenant demand, construction schedules, and financing. The opportunity is that owners and developers who understand this early can position themselves better. They can design projects with an energy strategy built in. They can engage utilities earlier. They can evaluate solar and storage. They can structure leases more intelligently. They can use energy diligence to avoid bad acquisitions. They can help government identify where permitting, interconnection, or the utility process are slowing down projects. And most importantly, they can stop treating electricity as an afterthought. The bottom line is this: in New Jersey real estate, energy is now part of the capital stack. It affects underwriting, it affects tenant economics, it affects municipal approvals, it affects construction timing, it affects long-term asset value. EO number 1 may help manage immediate affordability shock. EO number 2 may help address supply and reliability problem. But owners and developers should not wait passively. The smart move is to build an energy diligence into every project. Because developers who understand power, price, timing, and utility risk early will have a competitive advantage over those who discover the problem after they already bought the site, signed the lease, or closed on the loan. With that, I'm going to switch it back to Abby and let her walk you through EO number 5.
Thank you. So we are going to talk about EO number 5. EO number 5 seems to be the topic of the governor's press conference and press release that's sort of going on now. or just actually wrapped up just a few minutes ago. So I'll talk about that, the info that I do have on that. But before I get into the sort of the real-time updates, just to sum up, EO1 is electricity affordability, EO2 is about energy supply and reliability. So EO5 that we're talking about now is really about the process, right? And the process matters because in New Jersey, time is one of the largest hidden costs in any project. I'm sure that everyone on this Zoom has experienced, that in real life. A project could be very financially sound, great public benefits, create jobs, housing, infrastructure, tax revenue. But if the permitting process is unpredictable or fragmented or slow, that project becomes more expensive, more difficult to finance, and harder to deliver. So that's the basic overall problem that Executive Order number 5 is attempting to address. The order focuses on streamlining permitting, increasing transparency, with the broader goal of ultimately improving affordability and economic growth. It addresses cross-cutting regulatory and permitting inefficiencies that contribute to delays, higher costs, and reduce economic competitiveness. A major piece of this in this executive order is the cross-agency permitting team. The idea of this is to have a very coordinated one-stop shop approach across different state agencies. So I'm sure that many of you know this. A project doesn't always sit neatly within one agency, right? It may involve DEP, Environment, DOT, Transportation, DCA, Community Affairs, BPU, EDA, local approvals, federal approvals, state approvals. And so applicants can feel like they're just moving through these multiple separate systems at once, each with their own forms and timelines and review standards and internal processes. So with the establishment of this permitting team, cross-agency permitting team within the governor's Strategic Initiatives and Economic Opportunity Office, the goal is to coordinate and improve that whole process across state agencies. It's not to eliminate substantive review. Projects still need to comply with environmental and infrastructure and safety standards, of course. But the state is trying to just reduce confusion and duplication and avoidable delay. Another major piece of this executive order is the interactive permitting dashboard. This is intended to be a public digital portal that allows applicants to track the status of permit applications across agencies. It directs the creation of this dashboard so that everyone can see what's working really well and what maybe needs a little bit of tweaking, right? Where are holdups? Where are things moving smoothly? When applicants don't know where an application stands, what agency has it, what issues outstanding, when a response is likely, it's harder to manage every aspect of that project, financing, schedules, tenant commitments, other public approvals. So the dashboard doesn't necessarily solve those problems, but it just creates more visibility and transparency to see where the delays are occurring and to manage them more intelligently. Notably, and I'm going to just pull up my phone just for one moment. This is what the governor was discussing today on her announcement. They announced, and please don't quote me on this because I believe that a formal press release and more documents are coming. But it's my understanding that there was an announcement today at in conjunction with the NJDEP that announced the launch of this permitting pilot dashboard project selection. So it's sort of a trial run, for lack of a better word. It's a pilot dashboard so that the administration can test how the dashboard works for a broader rollout that they're anticipating, in the coming months or perhaps early next year. So the website and a press release, which will be hopefully out soon in the coming days, will talk about a call for entities with projects that need permits to apply to be on this pilot dashboard. And I believe that they're intending to select 10 in total. So I'll try to keep you posted if I hear more while we're still on this Zoom. Another element in Executive Order number 5 is a shot clock. It requires this cross-agency permitting team to establish presumptive processing timeframes for state permits. These are intended to create consistency and accountability. These timeframes are not enforceable legal deadlines. They're not private causes of action. They don't override existing law. It seems like it's more a goal, as a management tool, a benchmark, if you will. So it gives, the agencies as performance target. It gives the governor's office visibility into where the system is working and where it's not. The EO also requires the executive branch agencies to catalog their permits, to include statutory authority, processing timelines, fees, application steps, and other barriers to efficiency. I think along the same lines, you can't improve a permitting system until you sort of map it out and see what's working well and what needs a little bit of help. So the cataloging process gives the state a baseline for reform where they're looking at what permits are out there, who's issuing them, what fees are there, how long do they usually take, where are applications getting stuck, what processes are paper-based, what can be digitized. So overall, the executive order also looks to create this New Jersey report card. They note that it is a public-facing fiscal transparency portal that may display program performance and budget information. It's intended by the administration to increase transparency focused on state spending, revenue trends, program performance, and budget information. So for the business community, this matters tremendously. I'm sure Alnardo will talk a little bit more about this because predictability and transparency impact, so much. Investment decisions, for one. If businesses, developers, and institutions can better understand the government timelines and spending priorities, they can plan more effectively and efficiently. And one final piece of this executive order is the regulatory simplification team. Um, the EO creates a team tasked with reviewing and modernizing existing regulations, including looking at technology-driven approaches to streamline review. Um, Again, while maintaining all the environmental and legal protections and the substantive law. This is important because delays really are not caused by bad actors. They're caused by old systems that maybe need a little bit of revamping. So, some of the rules in place were made for a paper-based world. They were designed before some of the more modern data tools that we have. Maybe there are some duplicative processes or outdated sequencing. So this executive order is really asking the state and its agencies to look at how technology can be involved, different process redesigns, regulatory modernization. So again, this EO, just like EOs 1 and 2, is a great step, but it's not going to solve, every permitting issue. For example, the front office has acknowledged that a lot of projects require approvals at multiple levels, municipal, county, state, federal. This addresses state level executive branch permitting. It doesn't automatically bind anybody else. Um, However, the front office has also made clear that it is going to be reaching out in the future once this is set up and running, and today's announcement seems to be a big step in moving that forward, that they are going to be reaching out to municipalities, counties, other localities to see if they would like to, in the future, voluntarily participate in this as well. All right. But the practical message is that this executive order should improve state level transparency and coordination. Across everything from land use approvals, redevelopment approvals, DEP permits, DOT access permits. Um, the the state again has been asking for feedback. They want to hear from people. They want to hear what you think of this dashboard that they announced today. They want to hear what you think could be included, what might be better addressed on, local level, state levels. They really do want that feedback. They want to know where applications are getting stuck. They want to know when it takes 8 months to get a response or a comment. They want to understand what delays are caused by staffing versus unclear rules versus outdated technology. So I think that it's important to walk away from this. This executive order is not sort of abstract or hypothetical. The governor's office is really committed to trying to make the permitting process more efficient in real life, to reduce uncertainty, to improve economic competitiveness, and to give everyone a clear view of the road that they're on here. So I'll let Elnara talk a little bit more about some of those real life implications of this EO.
Uh, Thanks, Abby. Abby just walked us through executive order number 5 from the policy side. I want to translate that into what it actually means for owners, developers, lenders, tenants, investors, and municipalities trying to get projects done in New Jersey. And the first point is a permitting delay is not just a government process problem. It's a real estate economics problem. When we talk about permitting, it can sound procedural. It can sound like forms, checklists, agency comments, portals, and review letters. But for commercial real estate, time is money in the most literal sense of the word. Every month the project sits in permitting, the developer is carrying the land cost, interest cost, professional fees, which we don't feel any pain for on that issue, taxes, insurance, and opportunity costs. Construction pricing may move, tenant commitments may become stale, financing terms may change, investors may lose confidence, municipal expectations may shift, an election may happen, and in some cases, the entire capital stack can be put under pressure. So in Executive Order number 5 focuses on streamlining permitting, improving transparency, and creating cross-agency permitting team, developing a permitting dashboard, and establishing a presumptive processing timeframes. That's not just an administrative reform, that's economic development reform. EO number 5 aimed at addressing the regulatory and permitting inefficiencies that contribute to project delays, higher cost, and reduced competitiveness in New Jersey. For commercial real estate, that's an amazing opportunity for us to opine and talk to the governor's office about how this can actually work. If an agency tells you, no, you need to redesign this, it's painful, but at least you can react. You can redesign, appeal, negotiate, phase the project, or change the budget. But when you don't know where the application is, who has it, when the comments are coming, what the unresolved issue is, or whether one agency is awaiting another agency, the uncertainty is very difficult to underwrite and navigate. That's why EO5's emphasis on transparency matters. A permitting dashboard may sound simple, but for a developer, it can be an extremely valuable tool. If an applicant can see the status of a permit, the agency responsible, the stage of review, the missing items, the expected time frame, that helps manage lenders, tenants, investors, construction teams, and municipal partners. It also creates accountability, not legal accountability in the sense of automatic approval, because these shot clocks are not intended to override substantive law or create a private set of action or set of rights, but a practical accountability. If the state can see which permits are moving and which permits are stuck, then someone can manage the system. This is a very different model from applicants having to chase down answers on one phone call or one email, or it's sometimes just sitting in the vestibule of an agency to catch people coming in and out. Let's put this into a real example. Assume it's a $75 million industrial redevelopment project. Land's under contract, the municipality supports the project, tenant wants the space, the lender is prepared to finance it, but the project needs state level approval, maybe DEP permits, maybe a DOT access permit, utility coordination, or other agency review. If the approval takes 6 months longer than expected, the developer may be carrying the acquisition costs, soft costs, interest, taxes, and professional fees with no revenue coming in. An 8% cost cap on a 75 million project is roughly $6 million a year in carry cost. A 6-month delay can represent $3-4 million in financial drag before you even consider escalation, tenant concessions, or lost rent. These are real numbers and they really matter. So in the real world, EO5 is that it's attempting to bring order to a process that's long been chaotic. The cross-agency permitting team is potentially important because many projects do not fit within one agency silo. A modern development project may touch environmental law, transportation, utility infrastructure, economic development, building codes, DCA, stormwater, wetlands, resiliency, energy, and local planning. Cross-agency permitting teams are necessary, important because all those agencies are often impacted on substantial projects. I'm gonna stop. Got a couple more things I wanted to say, but I recognize we're getting a little light on time, and I think we've done a pretty good job of describing it, and we can give you some examples, but I know people may have questions. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to answer questions. I guess we have about 5 or 10 minutes left before the presentation is scheduled to be completed. So I don't know if I see Heather on, or I don't know if people have questions. I don't see any hands raised. I don't even know if that function is available. But I wanted to give people a chance to ask questions, uh, or um, just put some. I don't know if there's questions.
Yep, there's some question. I'm here. I'm still here. There are some questions in the comments that we can kind of start with, and then if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask their question to the group, you can do that at this time. So the first question we have is that you mentioned the credits applying to residential universal bill credits. What about office or industrial?
Right now, there's not a plan to give office or industrial bill credits.
And then the next question that we have is, where is the front office thinking the money will come from for the residential bill credits?
There is Abby laid it out in her presentation. Uh, there is money already set aside from,
Yeah, I can grab it in a second. I also think that the front office is still actively working on all of this, like in real time. And I wouldn't be surprised if, in the coming weeks or months, we see a little bit more detail on the residential bill credits issue as well as, other bill credits as well.
yeah, they have a pocket of money that they're pulling the money from. I did
Yeah,
read that. I'm just looking for it. It's in executive order number one under,
some of it is laid out.
yeah.
Okay, and then another question we have is, are either of you aware of what PJM is advocating to address data center capacity cost boosts? Has that been addressed at all?
Um, PJM is trying to work with our local utility companies and state BPU to increase capacity. It's really there's nothing else right now. Everybody's just trying to figure out how to increase capacity. I haven't seen any I haven't seen any um, hardcore plans or statements or policy initiatives from PJM with respect to data centers alone. They've been just issuing broad guidance about increase supply.
Hey,
Okay.
Heather, it's Jeff. I asked a question. Can I chime in here?
Do you have a question?
No, I'm the one that asked a question about PGM. I wanted to give El Nardo and the group some color on some recent information from PJM.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, by the way, really good job, El Nardo, with describing the real estate impacts of utility costs. It was spot on. You hit everything, and really appreciate your remarks. The Joel Bowering, the PJM market monitor, participated in a public utility law conference on the 17th, and I happen to have asked a question about, why don't we have a separate auction for the data centers, a separate class and a separate auction? And he said, yeah, that's what they're planning on doing. And for those of you who don't know, the problem has been that, matching all the projected loads up, including capacity against all available capacity. And then there's an auction and the lowest cost generators, bid in first, and then they take the next highest, all the way till they take the highest cost generator that satisfies the total capacity. And then we all pay that highest cost. So bifurcating the auction where traditional loads go first, we'll be back to theoretically a more normalized market. And then the data centers, would have a secondary auction, and then from the highest point upward, they would pay that next highest capacity mark. So that's where Joe Bowering was indicated that they were going, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. If that happens, none of what we're talking about matters as much. I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all, but it just doesn't matter as much. So that's my point.
I mean, we've been hearing that in the governor's office as well, that they're trying to essentially bifurcate the process so that the high energy users, and it might not just be data centers, which is also has a larger policy implication. There may be separate categories and separate, a separate process for large energy and high energy usages. So
Well,
there's
that has some hair and warts to it if we take high energy users, because there's a lot of commercial real estate owners that have, primary service, transmission grade service, and the way the bills have been coming out of Trenton, they keep trying to capture effectively commercial office buildings into this high energy user category. And it's important that, as advocates for our industry, we do what we can to stem the impulse to bifurcate it by looking at rate classes and saying, hey, this office building is transmission grade or large power and light. Oh, they're data center. No, they're not. We really need a bifurcation where data centers alone are carve outs, and then the commercial real estate industry is left alone intact as a separate user. So I appreciate attention to that distinction and protecting our commercial real estate market.
Well,
I have one last question, and then we're going to wrap up. And that is, are there any AI tools being authorized to expedite environmental or building code reviews in New Jersey?
I have not seen any. I'm sure that will be part of the process of trying to streamline the review process, but I've not seen anybody implement them. I think everybody's talking about how to use it, but I have not seen any municipality or state agency implement an AI tool to help streamline the permitting process.
All right. Did you guys have any last thoughts as we wrap this up?
I think it's a fast-changing environment. I think that the protection of the homeowner and residential homeowners and individual kind of tenants is really where, if you listen to what the legislators are thinking, is really where their heads are. So I think we have to stay vigilant, and folks in the commercial real estate industry, we have to pay a lot of attention because there is going to be a substantial change, and we just want to make sure that any ideas that are being brought forth by the administration, that they have as much information and as much policy kind of background as we can provide them. So I think that the message is stay vigilant, and this is a fast-moving kind of process. Governor's been speaking about it, talking about it. Abby told you that she did a press release conference today. So they're not sleeping on it. It's important to them, and so again, my final thoughts, and I'll let Abby kind of give hers, are that the process is moving quickly, and that you have to stay vigilant because if you don't, things will happen that don't make sense to you. So participate in the rulemaking, participate in whatever formal process comes about. They are saying right now that they are looking for industry input. So if you're part of industry groups, this group, and we have position papers that you want to provide, those are important. If the governor holds hearings or has some kind of formal input process where you can go down and speak to the issues that are important to you, I suggest you do it.
And I can echo everything El Nardo said. Thank you for having us. I just wanted to just sort of, I guess, re-amplify that it's been very refreshing, very good that the administration is not just lip service. They really do want to hear feedback on these particular issues and on other policy issues as well. In formulating our comments today, we had the opportunity to speak with several folks, that worked very directly on these policies, these executive orders, all sorts of input is welcome, desired, wanted. They were so happy to talk about this and share some of their insight on this. And if we can help at all with making those connections, we're very happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to spend this time with us. This was very, very informative. And again, thank you and Connolly and Foley for allowing you to spend the time with us. And we will be reaching out. So at this point in time, we're going to say good afternoon, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.